This is a finished JK BMS wiring diagram. And this is how to wire JK BMS the beginner-safe way, step by step. It sits on top of a pack of Leaf APO 4 cells, wired in series. In the next few minutes, every wire on it will make sense. The cells, the balance leads, and the two power terminals, B- and P-. Let's take it apart lead by lead. So what does a BMS actually do? BMS stands for Battery Management System. Its whole job is to protect the pack and to keep every cell healthy. It watches 4 things on every single cell. Over voltage, if a cell climbs too high on charge. Under voltage, if one sags too low on discharge. Over current, if something pulls too hard. And over temperature, if the pack runs hot. If any cell crosses a limit, the BMS cuts the pack off before damage is done. That is the safety half. The other half is balancing. Leaf APO 4 cells never charge at exactly the same rate. Over time, they drift apart. A good BMS nudges the high cells back down, so the whole pack stays even. That is why the balance leads matter so much, and it's where most people go wrong. Quick note before we wire anything. The editor on screen is completely free. It runs in your browser, and it is the first link in the description. Open a battery diagram there and follow along. No install, no sign up. Right, let's build the pack itself. Start with the cells. For a 12-volt pack, you wire 4 Leaf APO 4 cells in series. That's what 4S means, 4 cells in series. Want 24 volts? 8 cells. 48? 16. In series, the positive of one cell links to the negative of the next, with a solid bus bar bolted across each joint. Those bus bars carry the full pack current, so they have to be tight and clean. At the very bottom sits the pack negative, the whole string's minus. At the very top, the pack positive. Everything positive in the system ties back to that top. Now the pack is built, the BMS needs to read each cell. Here is the part everyone gets wrong. The balance leads. That little multi-pin connector reads the voltage at every cell junction, one thin wire per tap. Think of the taps as numbered from the bottom up. B0 is the pack negative. B1 is the joint between cell 1 and cell 2. B2 the next joint up, and so on, right to the top of the pack. The order is everything. You connect the balance leads from B0 upward, in sequence, bottom tap first, then each junction in turn. Get one out of order, or skip a tap, and the BMS reads the wrong cell, which can trip it, or worse. So go slow. B0 at the bottom, then B1, B2, up to the top. One wire, one junction in order. Now, the two big terminals, this is the heart of it. The BMS has AB- and AP-. B- is the battery negative. It bolts straight to the pack's minus, the bottom of your cell string. That is the only heavy wire going into the cells on the negative side. P- is the port negative. Everything else, your loads, your charger, your inverter, connects to P-, not to the cells. And every positive still goes to the pack positive up top. Why route the loads through P-? Because that is the switch the BMS controls. When a cell hits a limit, the BMS opens P- and cuts everything off, while the cell stays safe behind B-. Loads on the cells directly, and the BMS can't protect you. Let's rough out that layout in the free editor, so the shape is clear. I'll drop a source on the left, stand in for your cell string. Then a disconnect, standing in for the BMS that cuts the load. A load on the right, and a ground along the bottom rail. Every symbol snaps onto the grid, evenly spaced, so nothing lands crooked. Source on the left, protection in the middle, load on the right, the same left to right shape as the real pack. 3 more things before you build your own. First, the JK's party trick, active balancing. Cheaper boards bleed off extra charge as heat. A JK active balancer shuttles charge from the full cells into the low ones, so it balances faster and wastes less. Second, the app. JK boards pair over Bluetooth, so you watch every cell voltage, temperature, and the balancing live on your phone. Third, fuse the main leads. A Leaf APO 4 pack can dump enormous current into a short, so put a fuse close to the pack positive. And never hot plug the balance connector before B- is bolted down. Connect the main negative first, always. Back in the editor, we wired up, right angles only. From a source, straight across into the disconnect. Out of the disconnect, over to the load. Then down and along the bottom, back to ground, and home to the source. Watch each wire turn at a clean corner, all by itself. Because the parts were placed on the grid first, the finished diagram simply reads: source, through the cutoff, into the load, and back home. One honest word on safety. A Leaf APO 4-pack stores a huge amount of energy. A dead short across, it can melt a wrench or start a fire in seconds. So treat it with respect. This video explains the diagram, so you understand how a JK BMS fits onto your pack. For a real build, fuse the main leads, torque the bus bars, and if you're stacking a big pack, get a qualified hand to check it. Here is the finished diagram once more. Cells, balance leads, B- and P-, every wire now making sense. So that is how to wire a JK BMS without the mystery. Cells in series, bus bars bolted tight. Balance leads from B0 up, in order, never skip a tap. B- bolts to the pack negative. P- feeds your loads and charger, so the BMS can cut them off. Fuse the main leads, and connect the main negative before you ever touch the balance plug. The editor is free at circuitdiagrammaker.app. Open a battery diagram and lay out your own pack. If this made BMS wiring click, subscribe. More wiring tutorials are coming. Stay safe out there.